Did you know that the walls of Benin City were once 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China? That's just one small piece of the incredible story of the Benin Empire, a kingdom in West Africa that rose to power centuries ago, flourished for a time, and then ultimately fell. It's a story filled with powerful rulers, intricate art, complex social structures, and ultimately, a tragic end. And it's a story that's still debated and discussed today. Some see it as a narrative of a glorious past. Others focus on the darker aspects of its history. Let's delve into this fascinating empire and explore its rise and fall. The story of Benin begins long before its period of great power. We have to go back centuries to the early kingdoms and the oral traditions that shaped the region. These traditions tell us of migrations, of powerful leaders, and of the establishment of a kingdom that would eventually become known as Benin. It wasn't a sudden explosion of power, but a gradual process, a slow accumulation of influence and control over the surrounding lands. One of the key figures in the early history of Benin is Ewekabans. He is considered by many to be the first Oba, or king, of Benin. He established a dynasty that would rule for centuries, shaping the political and social landscape of the empire. But it's important to remember that history isn't always clear-cut. There are different versions of these stories, different interpretations of the past, and that's part of what makes studying history so interesting. We have to piece together the evidence, consider different perspectives, and try to get as close to the truth as possible. The early Benin Kingdom was a society built on agriculture, trade, and a complex system of beliefs. The Oba was not just a political leader, but also a spiritual figure, believed to have divine connections. This intertwining of political and religious authority was a common feature of many pre-colonial African societies. It gave the Oba immense power, but also placed a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. As the kingdom grew, so did its wealth and influence. Benin became a major trading center, connecting the interior of Africa with European merchants who arrived on the coast. This trade brought new goods and ideas to Benin, but it also had a darker side. The transatlantic slave trade, though not the focus of Benin's economy initially, would eventually have a devastating impact on the region. But before that dark chapter, Benin experienced a golden age. This was a period of artistic flourishing, a time when Benin's artists produced some of the most remarkable works of art in Africa. The famous Benin bronzes, intricate sculptures made of brass, are a testament to the skill and craftsmanship of Benin's artists. These bronzes depict scenes from court life, historical events, and religious beliefs. They provide us with a glimpse into the world of the Benin Empire, its rituals, its social hierarchy, and its artistic traditions. The Benin bronzes weren't just decorative objects. They served a purpose. They were often displayed in the royal palace, serving as symbols of the Oba's power and authority. They were also used in religious ceremonies, connecting the earthly realm with the spiritual world. And they played a role in recording and preserving the history of the empire, telling stories of past rulers and important events. The creation of these bronzes was a complex process, requiring specialized skills and knowledge. The artists who created them were highly respected members of society, working in guilds that passed down their techniques from generation to generation. The bronzes themselves are made using the lost wax casting method, a technique that involves creating a wax model, covering it in clay, and then melting the wax away to leave a mold into which molten bronze is poured. The result is a unique and intricate work of art. The wealth generated by trade allowed the Benin Empire to expand its territory. The Oba led armies in campaigns against neighboring kingdoms, bringing more land and resources under Benin's control. The empire became a powerful force in the region, demanding tribute from its neighbors and controlling important trade routes. But this expansion came at a cost. Constant warfare put a strain on the empire's resources and led to tensions with neighboring peoples. And within the empire itself, There were power struggles and internal conflicts. The history of Benin is not just a story of unity and strength, but also a story of internal divisions and challenges to the Oba's authority. As the empire grew, so did its administrative structures. The Oba relied on a complex network of officials and advisors to govern his vast realm. These officials came from different social classes and played various roles in the administration of the empire. Some were responsible for collecting taxes, others for overseeing trade, and still others for maintaining the army. The social structure of Benin was hierarchical, with the Oba at the top, followed by nobles, officials, craftspeople, farmers, and slaves. Slavery existed in Benin, as it did in many societies at the time, but it's important to understand that it was different from the chattel slavery that developed in the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade. In Benin, slaves often had certain rights and could even rise to positions of influence within society. The religion of Benin was complex and multifaceted, with a pantheon of gods and spirits. The Oba played a crucial role in religious ceremonies, acting as a mediator between the human world and the spiritual realm. The belief in ancestors was also an important part of Benin's religion, with rituals performed to honor and appease the spirits of deceased rulers and other important figures. The Oba's palace was the center of power in the empire. It was a vast complex of buildings, courtyards and shrines, decorated with elaborate carvings and works of art. The palace was not just the residence of the Oba, but also the seat of government, where important decisions were made and ceremonies were held. The walls of Benin City, mentioned earlier, were a remarkable feat of engineering. They were built over centuries, gradually expanding to enclose a larger and larger area. These walls were not just defensive structures, but also symbols of the empire's power and prestige. They demonstrated the ability of the Benin people to organize and mobilize resources on a massive scale. But despite its strength and wealth, the Benin Empire was not immune to challenges. The growing European presence on the coast brought new pressures and new opportunities. European traders sought access to Benin's resources, including palm oil, ivory, and unfortunately, slaves. The slave trade, while not initially a central part of Benin's economy, became increasingly important as European demand for enslaved Africans grew. This trade had a devastating impact on the region, fueling conflict and undermining traditional social structures. The relationship between Benin and European powers was complex and often fraught with tension. While trade brought benefits to both sides, it also led to competition and rivalry. European powers vied for control of trade routes and sought to exert their influence over Benin's policies. As the 19th century approached, the Benin Empire faced increasing internal and external pressures. The slave trade had weakened the kingdom, and conflicts with neighboring states further strained its resources. The power of the Oba also fluctuated, with periods of strong rule followed by periods of instability. Then came the event that would ultimately lead to the downfall of the Benin Empire, the British punitive expedition of 1897. This expedition was launched in response to an incident in which several British officials were killed in Benin territory. The British government saw this as an opportunity to assert its control over the region and gain access to Benin's resources. The British forces, equipped with superior weapons, quickly overwhelmed the Benin army. Benin City was sacked and looted, and the Oba, Ovonramwen Nogbaisi, was exiled. The Benin bronzes, which had adorned the royal palace for centuries, were taken by the British and dispersed around the world. The fall of Benin marked the end of an era. The empire was incorporated into British colonial Nigeria, and the Oba's power was drastically reduced. The Benin bronzes, scattered across museums and private collections, became symbols of the empire's lost glory and a source of ongoing debate about repatriation. The story of the Benin Empire is a complex and multifaceted one. It's a story of rise and fall, of power and weakness, of artistic achievement and ultimately tragedy. It's a story that raises important questions about colonialism, about the legacy of the slave trade, and about the preservation of cultural heritage. And it's a story that continues to resonate today. What do you think about the Benin Empire? What aspects of its history do you find most interesting? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future videos. Perhaps you have a question about Benin's art, its social structure, or its relationship with European powers. Or maybe there's another historical topic you'd like me to explore. Let's start a conversation and learn together. I'm also planning to create some community polls soon, so keep an eye out for those. And I'll be sharing some behind-the-scenes content on other platforms, so make sure you're following me there too. Let's build a community of history enthusiasts and explore the past together.